guys, welcome to the WIKI channel where the search for the truth begins. So today's topic is last 4 hours of India versus China skirmish. New orders for the Indian Army. We have a lot of questions. From which country did the coronavirus started to spread across the globe? Kids to adults know the answer is China. This name has been given to China. But India is called the pharmacy of the world. Our Indian Army has been ordered by the Defense Ministry to take quick and effective actions. Why is India being praised as the pharmacy of the world? What is the reason? Through the Defense Ministry, different strategy and funds are given to the Indian armies. What happened in the last 4 hours, June 15th and June 16th? So let's get into the video. We know Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The organization's headquarters are in China's capital. From 2017, the important countries which are in the Shanghai corporations are India, Pakistan, China and Russia. This organization has now praised India as the pharmacy of the world. During the coronavirus crisis, India has helped nearly 130 countries. SEO has praised India for supplying medicines to combat COVID-19. This must be very irritating for China. Now the question remains, have the tensions between India and China reduced? The answer is no. When the news of releasing 10 Indian soldiers by the Chinese came out, General VP Singh gives a press meet. If 20 Indian soldiers have been killed, then the Chinese should have 40 or more casualties. India also captured Chinese soldiers and released them. This is army news which cannot be released to the public. Did the Indian Army capture a Chinese colonel? Many media have confirmed the news. What happened in the last 4 hours of this terrible skirmish? Zee News or Times of India using various sources have released news. We don't know whether this news is real or not. We cannot confirm the source, but we would like to discuss the news with you. After so many failures in the peace talks, June 5th and 6th, they had a military peace talk. The result of the peace talk was to go back to their own borders and not to create any issues. Both sides who were occupying territories were retreating. In the Galwan Valley, there is a place called Patrol Point 14. On June 14th, the Chinese army left the Patrol Point 14 and went back to their borders. On 15th June, the Indian Army receives intel that the Chinese army has occupied the Patrol Point 14 and have built their tents. So, after hearing the news from the Bihar regiment, Colonel Santosh Babu and 35 army soldiers have gone to the Chinese occupied Patrol Point 14. The Chinese soldiers were not the border army, but it was the death squad which has built tents. Colonel Santosh Babu started a peace talk with the Chinese death squad to destroy their tents and go back to their borders. But when Colonel Santosh Babu was speaking with them, he was suddenly and deliberately attacked by the Chinese death squad. The remaining soldiers who were seeing their commanding officer being attacked started engaging the Chinese army ferociously despite being heavily outnumbered. So this skirmish took nearly 30 minutes to end. The Indian army retreated and gathered its strength and went back to the region. The Indian army again approached the Chinese army to have peace talks, but there were arguments and it turned out into a melee fight. The Chinese used stones, iron rods, clubs, but our Indian army used its bare hands. The Indian army has snapped the neck of the Chinese soldiers and killed them. The Indian army broke the Chinese soldiers' bones to kill them. We cannot confirm this news, but we can clearly see that our brave Indian soldiers have stood up against the Chinese army. The second attack happened for 40 minutes. So the time was 9 p.m. Many soldiers' bodies were on the ground and both armies came back to retrieve their fallen comrades. The Chinese have sent a drone to scout the area. The drone sent back information using its night vision and infrared cameras to map the damage and to mount another assault on the survivors of the Indian army. This is China's cunning ways. They used guerrilla warfare and the Indian soldiers gave the Chinese army a fitting reply. The third attack happened for 3 hours. The news said that it continued from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. on the 16th of June. Both armies have retreated to their borders. Then the Chinese helicopters flew into the region to pick up their dead and injured soldiers. When the skirmish took place, both armies crossed the borders and were held captives. 10 of our Indian soldiers were captured and the Indian army caught 15 Chinese soldiers. We have exchanged the prisoners with the Chinese. This is the unconfirmed news from the sources and media. This news will be confirmed once the Indian army or the Indian government confirms the news. What were the orders from our defense ministry to the Indian army? The defense ministry has said to the Indian soldiers that don't wait for orders. Engage the enemy if you have to. The army can function accordingly to the situation. The Defense Ministry has changed the rules of engagement to use firearms under extraordinary circumstances. There is a reason behind these orders. Our Defense Minister Rajnath Singh has to attend the meeting in Russia from 23rd to 26th June. The meeting will be held on 24th of June. So the Indian Army doesn't have to wait for the orders from the Defense Minister. It can act spontaneously. This order has increased the strength of the army. India has given fund to buy equipments needed for the Air Force, Army and the Naval Command. The news is for each army 500 crores fund was given. This is a small boost to the Indian Army. After the Uri attacks, similar financial powers were given to the armed forces. The Air Force benefited by these funds to buy advanced weapons. The situation is now the same, so the fund has been dispatched to the Indian Armed Forces. Our 20 brave Indian soldiers, despite being outnumbered by the Chinese army, have stood their ground and fought against the Chinese army. They will be remembered as real-life heroes of India. This is a new hope for the Indians. Our Indian soldiers had a heroic death after killing more than 40 Chinese soldiers. Comments about this video are most welcome. Please do subscribe and share for more content to WIKI Walks, the voice of Wiki. Nandri, Vanakkam.